very excited to introduce our next speaker because she is an amazing woman. She's one of the people that I also stalk once in a while because I love working. I love learning from her. She is another Freedom Summit veteran. So last year we were able to go to Malaysia and Singapore together. She is the founder and owner of Coach of Amplify You. She was speaking on stages about podcasting before most people knew what they were. She started as a Vancouver-based podcasting group and started producing podcasts for clients in 2012 and has been speaking and training about podcasting internationally since then. She works with thought leaders and heart-centered business owners who have a mission to change the world. Together, she and her Amplify You team create and produce their shows. She and her team have coached a lot of clients to launch over 100 podcasts in the past 12 months. So if you guys are thinking of either starting a podcast or you want to serve podcasters, if that's going to be your niche, with her topic, Amplify Your Influence and Make a Bigger Impact with Podcasting, where you'll learn the 3 major opportunities in podcasting and the 4 major hangups we see preventing people from hitting the record button. Everyone, please send clap emojis, send heart emojis, send your favorite emojis for your speaker, Miss Michelle Abram. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Leanne. How are you?
Thank you. Very excited.
So great to see you and so great to be here again today. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this. And I've been listening in. And you know what? I just want to first say Charlene was one of the people I met last year along you, Leanne. And she came up to me and she wanted to know some information about podcasting. And she was a podcaster, which was so cool. Since then, she's been a guest on my podcast. I've been a guest on her podcast. So as she came in as an attendee last year, look, now she's speaking on stage here too at Freedom Summit. How cool is that? So awesome. The opportunities and connections are there. Amazing.
Yeah, definitely. So Michelle, I will take my leave. I know this is going to be awesome. I know this is going to be another page worth of notes for me. So Michelle, you are free.
Okay. Thank you, Leanne. Okay. I'm just going to share my screen here with you guys in 1 second. Okay. Here we go. Sharing my screen. Okay. Here we go. So it's still in Canva here. So we're just going to press present 1 second. And I'm going to set my timer here and make sure that I am on perfect timing for you guys. So we have some questions at the end. I am also going to give away some prizes during this talk. So you guys are, if you can first of all just say in the chat that you can see me okay. Just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen good. And we are good to go there. I'm just going to close all the other browsers. So we have awesome Wi-Fi and everything for you guys today. So here we go. And just checking in again with you guys here, making sure that you can see my screen. Good. Okay. Looking good. Okay. So you guys, we were talking about podcasting today, and I am super excited about podcasting. Even since I was in the Philippines last year and Malaysia and Singapore, I've been keeping an eye on the podcasting space in Asia. And oh my gosh, I've seen it exploding over there as well as over here in North America. So I'm in Canada right now, and I am just super excited about podcasting. So today we're going to talk about amplifying your influence to make a bigger impact with podcasting. So you're in the perfect place right now. There's no better time right now to get involved in podcasting. I'm going to share with you some different possibilities of ways you can get involved in podcasting, and you're in the perfect place and the perfect timing right now for those opportunities. So you may want to listen to this right now. So podcasting, in a world of podcasting right now, in our world, there's nothing more valuable than time and attention. Those are our 2 most valuable assets. And no other platform even compares with the amount of time and attention you get from your audience than podcasting. So what that looks like is like Facebook, you get maybe 18.2 seconds for someone to view something, a post or a video. On YouTube, it's maybe 4 minutes and 20 seconds. On Instagram, it's maybe 26 seconds. That's not long at all. And on podcasting, oh my gosh, the average listen time is 20 minutes long, you guys. This is huge. This is one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about podcasting, because, you know, there's no better place than in the podcasting space to get your message out there. So we are in the golden ages of podcasting. It has been around for a long time, but believe it or not, it's still really in its infancy stages. So which is exciting. That means there's lots of room for growth. And just as Leanne said, I want you to know that you're in the right company. We have launched over 100 podcasts in the last 12 months with my team. And I'm just excited. I think we have 8 more coming out in the next couple of weeks, which is super exciting. So this is not to brag. This is just to show you, as Charlene was saying in her presentation, I too am a mom. I have 2 kids, 4 and 7, and I've been doing this while I've been a mom. And I was just recognized as one of the top 50 moms in podcasting by Podcast Magazine in May. And that's really exciting for me. But what's even more exciting for me is that I was recognized alongside 2 of my clients, and 3 actually, there's one on another page, who are also recognized as one of the top 50 moms in the podcasting space. So that was really cool thing that happened in May. And Kevin Harrington, the guy who was the original shark on Shark Tank, called my company the top podcast management company in North America, which I thought that was super cool as well. So that's not to brag. That's just to show you that I have some credibility in the podcasting space, and what I'm talking about today hopefully will land with you. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about a little bit about what podcasting is all about, a little bit about my story, if that's okay with you. And then I want to share with you the 3 opportunities that are in podcasting, and which you can figure out which one might be right for you, or maybe all 3 are. And the 4 things that I see are stopping smart entrepreneurs like you from getting started in podcasting. And then I want to leave some time for some questions, because those are super valuable to learn from. Plus, the more questions you ask, the more chances you are to get some prizes. I have 2 prizes to give away during this talk. One is an interview with me on my podcast, Amplify You. And the second one, the second prize I'm going to give away is something, maybe I'll tell you about it in a little while. It's something really cool as well. Okay, so what is podcasting? Podcasting is actually really just using the internet to make digital recordings and broadcasts available on a computer or mobile device. So typically podcasting has been audio, but actually now podcasting is considered audio or video. You can find podcasting on things like Spotify, Google, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Player.fm, all sorts of different places. So that's pretty much what a podcast is. So don't be this guy. When you hear the word podcasting, you may think of all these different things that you need as far as equipment goes. So you might think that you need lots of equipment. You might think that it's the technology is overwhelming. You might fear that your voice is not good enough, and don't bang your head on your computer. We don't want you to be this guy. We want you to know that, don't worry, there is a space for everyone in podcasting, and it's not as difficult as it may seem. So I know of 3 opportunities for experts, entrepreneurs, people that are seeking a freedom lifestyle in podcasting. One is being the host. So I would say that would be the number one, not the number one way of being involved in podcasting is being a host of your own show. Number 2 would be being a guest on a show, which means so you're going to someone else's show. And number 3 would be being a podcast manager. So maybe you're helping podcasters managing your show. So this is great for freelancers or virtual assistants and people who are interested in work like that. Now, I would love to see in the chat if you think the opportunity for you would be being a guest on the show, where this is, if you have a message that you're really excited to share, you want to start a movement, and you've written a book, or maybe you're a coach, or you have something that you just want to get out there and you want to share an experience, or something that happened that you just want to go out and be in front of everyone else's audience. Put in the chat number 1 if that's for you. I'd love to know. So this is me being a guest on a show on Reinvention Radio. So I do all 3 of these opportunities. So you might be wanting to do all 3 as well. So being a guest on a show is fantastic. You get to share your message with someone else's audience. Now, I'd love to see in the chat number 2, if you want to be a host of a show. Do you want to have your own show? The benefits of having your own show is you get to have the creativity of putting your message out there. You also get to reach out and invite people onto your show who you might maybe not be comfortable reaching out to otherwise. But now you have a platform that they may want to be on. That would be people that are famous or people that are celebrities. You have a platform that they want to be on now. So now the being a host of your show. How many twos do we got there? All right, let's see those twos if you want to be a host. And the third opportunity is becoming a podcast manager. And so this is what I do with my team. So what we do as a podcast manager is we take a show with a podcast host, we let them record their information and their content, and then we take that content and we edit it. We put the introduction on and the outro, and we mix it to music, and we do some audio editing, and then we publish it. And maybe we post on social media for them. We create some graphics and we syndicated that out over all the different platforms that podcast is available on. And so that's what we do. So who in the audience thinks that they're a number 3, a podcast manager? That might be something they're interested in. Especially if you're already being a virtual assistant or you're already freelancing, this is a great opportunity right now to do podcasts, to be a podcast manager. In fact, I just hired someone from the Philippines for my team just recently this week, in the last 2 weeks. So I'm really excited about that. So if you're a number 3, let's see that. All right, number 3 in the chat. And if you're thinking wait a second, I could be a host, I could also go on as a guest, and I could also be a podcast manager. I'd love to see a number 4. If you want to be all of them, let's see a number 4. Okay, awesome. I can't see the chat right now, so I'm hoping you guys are participating. All right. So why I decided on becoming a podcast manager and helping people with their podcasts is because I feel like experts, it's my job in the world here to help experts and authors, coaches, speakers, wellness professionals, anyone who has a really positive message in the world. I feel like I really want to help them get that message out in the world in a bigger way. So for example, I just started working with a client this week. She is a high commissioner in the UN, and she wants to talk about inclusive leadership and cultural diversity. And what a great time to have that conversation. And so she's using her podcast as a platform, a way to reach out to different people and have that conversation and be a platform that she is using to get her message out in the world. So what I find sometimes with experts, though, is that we are so good at sharing our message, but the idea of doing all the editing and software and learning all these new programs, that's overwhelming. So where we specialize in my team is we do it for them. So we get our experts to record something, and then we take the audio and we do everything else, like I said. So our motto is you record, stay in your zone of genius, and then you let us do the rest. And is it okay if I share a little bit about my story? I don't want to talk about myself too much, but I think this really relates, and I think this can help some of you who are thinking about being in the podcast space. So is that okay with everyone? Okay. So my podcast journey started with this little guy. And I can relate to Shalane said, I was an entrepreneur for almost 7 years before I had a baby. And when I had a baby, I thought, oh my gosh, I love being a mom. This is great. But my business brain, I finally have a family. This is awesome. My little guy's so cute, but my business brain couldn't help but get a little bit dehydrated. It was missing the business action. It was missing thinking about marketing and thinking about things like that. So one day I was lying on the floor playing with my son, and we were doing a lot of goo goo gaga kind of things. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to turn on the Apple TV. And I saw this purple little thing here, and I'm like, what is this thing? What are podcasts? I don't know what podcasts are. So I turned it on, and then I also noticed in the car, when I got into the car, this Apple CarPlay was also in the car. Oh my gosh, what is this thing? So I started listening to some podcasts on there, things like Jamie Tardy's Eventual Millionaire, where she was talking about businesses and marketing, and Amy Porterfield's Online Marketing Made Easy podcast. Those were some ones that really I was like, wow, this is great. So I listened to all of them while I was playing with my son. It was going on in the TV in the background. So my business brain was all of a sudden like, yes, I kind of felt myself going down the path of maybe postpartum depression. And I can see how easily that can really affect you as a new mom, and you're used to doing business and you're busy, and then all of a sudden, your life has changed and your lack of sleep, and oh my gosh, so many things happen. So I felt myself going down into that kind of dark place. And I felt like podcasting really pulled me out of that. And, now knowing as much as I do about podcasting, I know that podcast listening, as a listener, like you can, or as a podcaster, you can have that impact on someone where you can change their life through your message. You never know who's listening out there, right? So, I mean, Jamie Tardy and Amy Porterfield have no idea the impact that they had on my life, but it really was impactful. It set my life on a different course altogether, where I became obsessed with podcasting. I couldn't wait to listen to all the podcasts. And I had this dream of going on an RV, and I'd never been, ever have ever been in an RV or done any sort of RVing. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do a virtual summit, kind of like we're in right now. So I gathered 25 experts from across the internet I could find, who were experts in RVing, how to buy one, what to do. And I interviewed them all. And at the end of the virtual summit recording, I asked them about 20 minutes of questions about themselves. And I took that after the summit and I recorded that and published it as a podcast. So my curiosity for learning about something really became a podcast, and it became a virtual summit. And what was really cool about that is my podcast then sold virtual summit recordings, and it actually funded our entire trip. Excuse me. So my family, this was a few years ago, we got to go down from Vancouver, BC, where we are, all the way down to California, which is about 5,000 kilometers away. It's a long time. It takes a couple of weeks to drive down there. And we spent a few months traveling around with our kids and our family and having a really true freedom lifestyle. And all the meanwhile, I was editing podcasts every night while my kids were sleeping, and I was running my podcast business while we were doing that. Today, I have Amplify You, which is a podcast about helping people become podcasters. And it is, if you're interested in podcasting, listening, I interview other podcasters and what's been successful for them. I also interview experts about what things that they can do to help podcasters, like voice coaches or audio branding or lots of different topics. And I also do the Blissful Parenting podcast. So I'm a Blissful Parenting podcast host. Excuse me. And I'm on RV There Yet podcast is the other one that I have. So my family moved off the grid. We decided to, when we came back from RVing, figured out that the city was not for us. We decided that we wanted to have a more freedom lifestyle. And so we moved away a few hours from where we are. And this is where we live now. Some of you have seen those slides from last year, but we still live there. It's awesome. We've been there almost 3 years now. Here's a few of the shows that we work with. Hmm. And I want to tell you guys about the 4 biggest things that stop smart, savvy experts from ever having a podcast. And I see this over and over and over again. The first one is fear. Now you may be thinking, oh yeah, fear of failing at a podcast. But it's actually sometimes not fear of failing. It's fear of nobody will listen, fear of being too successful, fear that nobody will like your voice. There's all sorts of different fears that pop up while you're podcasting or while you're thinking about becoming a podcaster. And I see this stopping people from getting started. So one of the things that we suggest doing is just get going. Just take little small actions every day towards the goal that you want to have. So just keep going, small little actions, and this will get you over your fear. And know that there is listeners out there for you. So you're not going to launch your podcast and hear crickets. There will be people listening. I guarantee there's so many people on these platforms that you will have listeners. I promise. I have listeners on my podcast. And if I have listeners, you can have listeners too. I'm speaking about podcasting on a podcasting platform. That's pretty strange. So the fear, I find that this is easy to conquer by action. So just take lots of action. The second thing that stops people right in their tracks, and this is a big one. If you look at the picture on the top, this is what you think, what people think you need when you're podcasting is lots of equipment, lots of microphones, lots of wires, and all sorts of things. But really, all you need is a computer, usually Zoom to record, and a microphone. And you know what? Even if you don't have a microphone, you can still get started with just your computer and Zoom if you're recording with interviewing someone. Okay, so that's how simple it is right now. One of my mentors told me how he used to use a phone and a dial-up connection. He'd have to put them together and record on a separate device, and it was really complicated. And so, not we don't need to be complicated like that anymore. It's pretty simple. The technology. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube as well that will help you out. Lots of free information out there about podcasting. And then the third thing that really stops people in their tracks is perfection. And what I find is perfection stops people from moving forward. So they haven't found the right music, or the cover rate isn't quite perfect, or they don't like the sound of the intro voice, or they can't figure out what to say on the first episode. So these are a lot of things that can prevent you from getting going. We have this saying in our business that if you are not embarrassed by your first few episodes a few months down the road, looking back at them, then you waited too long to do it. You really do just need to get something out there. And over time, you'll get better and better at it. So you'll get better at interviewing and better at the lighting, and your microphone skills will get better. So don't be afraid of getting started, and don't let perfectionism get in the way of moving forward. And the last thing is time. So when you think of podcasting, and when I'm speaking to entrepreneurs and they're saying, I want to start a podcast, but it's like another thing I have to do in my business. Well, to me, that's the wrong way of looking at it. So for me, podcasting is really exciting because it actually saved me time. So content creation is a whole animal in itself. And there's so many different social media platforms out there. And there's so many things that we feel like we need to do to kind of market ourselves as business owners or entrepreneurs. But if you take a look at your content creation and you sit down and really think about it, and you record a few episodes at the beginning of the month, you can have all of your content done for the entire month with your 4 or 5 podcast episodes, which release once a week. From those episodes, if you record in video, you're going to get some videos out of them. You can get small videos for Instagram stories and other ones for Facebook stories. You can get longer videos for using audiograms. You can also do transcriptions and get blog posts from it. You can take your audio, extract it from the video, and use those on the podcasting platforms. So you can actually create all of your content marketing for your entire business from your podcasts. Not to mention podcasting are evergreen. Podcasts are evergreen. Once they go up there, they're never going away. People can still find them years and years and years later, which is great. So time, don't let time stop you. Think of it as a way of saving time. And basically, if you're using your podcast for all of your social media and content for your entire month, you're going to be able to save a bit of time that way. All right, so here's what we know about podcasting. There's over 1 million podcasts right now as of April 2020. That is a lot. But there's a lot of space still in the podcasting space. There's much, about 10,000 blogs for every one podcast out there still. There's lots of room in the podcasting space still. Here's what we know. The most popular genres of podcasting are business, society, culture, comedy, health, and news and politics. So if you have something that you want to talk about within those spaces, that's great. Google is new to podcasting, but it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. So they're really paying attention to the SEO of podcasting. So when you publish your episode and a blog post, they like seeing that. They're starting to index podcasts in the Google search engines, which is amazing. And here's what we know: podcast listeners are loyal. They're going to come back to your show over and over again. They're typically more affluent and they're highly educated compared to other platform listeners. So 80% of all or most of 80% of listeners listen to all or most of your podcast episode every week. And the average podcast listener listens to over 7 shows a week. That's great. So what can podcasting do for you? So podcasting can be a way for you to share your story and share your message in the world. If you're a movement maker and you're creating a movement out there, you have a positive impact message to make, podcasting is such a great platform. Number 2, it helps you position yourself as an expert. So when you're interviewing someone, you're obviously elevating them as the expert on your show. So that way you're creating more connection. So that's the third thing I love about podcasting is the connection. But then when you also do your own shows, you get to showcase yourself as the expert, which positions you well. You have your own show and you're an expert at what you are delivering in your content. Plus, because you're in someone's earbuds, you're in their headspace. That is a very intimate place to be. So people get to like, know, and trust you a lot faster. So a couple of things I want to share with you. Robin, one of our clients, she ran a contest that had 150 entries that helped her show hit #1 in podcasting in 3 different countries when she launched it. And Janice, her podcast, she reached out and interviewed someone, and then he referred someone to her show, and that person ended up inviting her to speak at a national conference in front of 40,000 people, all from her podcast. And Ryan, right now he has about 170,000 downloads, and he has a sold out coaching program with a wait list. People tell him that they've listened to his podcast for a year, and now they're ready to invest in a very high level, high ticket price coaching program. Now, these aren't results that everyone's getting, but these are real clients of mine, and these are real results that they've gotten in the last year. So Emily, her podcast, she speaks to people with anxiety, and so she's got such a niche in her topic. She knows exactly what they're thinking because she was that girl a few years ago, and so she's booking constant discovery calls into her coaching program from her podcast as well. She says it's the #1 ROI in her business, and her secret is that listening to her have a conversation in her podcast is like listening into 2 friends having a conversation. And so I believe everyone has a story. And one of the reasons that I am so passionate about helping other people get their story out is when I was 19 years old, my friend in the middle there, her name's Cecilia. So I'm on the right there beside her. But we were backpacking through Europe and she was killed by a train. And the few months before that happened, I saw her just bloom as a person. She came out of her shell. She was like, just it really was so cool to see her lit up and excited for life, and then her life ended. And I know she had a story inside her that was supposed to make a change in the world. And so she unfortunately doesn't get to share her message in the world, but I know you can, and I know you still have your message inside of you. And so don't let it die inside of you. What is your story and what is it? So we are all here with a story to share to the world, and we have something that's going to make a difference in someone else's life. Even if it's just one person at a time. If you change one person's life, that's great. So just think about the ripple effect that your story and your message can make when you share it with the world. And having a platform like podcasting allows you to do that in such a big way. So I want to thank you guys so much for listening to me today. I hope that was valuable, and I want to give you some time to ask me some questions. But I do have a gift for you. So I have 2 free gifts for you, actually. The first thing is a free guide, which is 5 steps to create a predictable podcast profits on autopilot. So this is how coaches, course creators, consultants, and expert entrepreneurs can turn a podcast into a traffic, leads, and high ticket sales machine. So that's #1. And that is my friend Evans has given us that to work together on that. So he's given that gift, and my gift is 7 top places where podcasters search for perfect podcast guests. So if you're wanting to be a guest on podcasts, this is a PDF that you want to download, and it gives you a list of 7 different places where you can take your information, your picture, and your profile, and you can post it up on these sites, and people will book you for interviews based on what your story is. So really, both of those are really valuable. And you can find those at mypodcastcoach.com/gifts. And here's where you can find me on social media. I would love to connect with you. Reach out to me, and let's see if there's any questions. I think Fabio is there now.
Yes, I am. Hello,
Hello.
Michelle. How are you?
Hello.
Surprise.
Hi, nice to see you.
I am holding the torch now that Leanne passed to me, the torch of freedom. We are taking the example of all the Olympians we have been listening to from Dennis Whiteley. And it's glad to see you again on Freedom Summit Global. Now take a break, take a deep breath. There was a lot of energy coming out.
A lot of information in there.
A lot of information and a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity about podcasts in the Philippines. It also seemed to have a little bit of a debate here among our listeners, whether or not the market for podcasts is ready or not ready in the Philippines. Some people say that it's all we hear about in marketing, and others say, no, well, the market is still not here yet. But there are many curiosities. But first of all, one question from me, and I met you the last year when you were with us, and you were sort of a pioneer in podcasting, I understand. You were one of the first ones to deal with podcasting with others. iPod, maybe? What was it about? How was it like back then in the very beginning of this business?
Yeah, I would say I'd walk down the street. If you were to ask 10 people what podcasting was, maybe 1 or 2 people would know what that is. And, there was people podcasting 10 years before I even found out about podcasting. So I felt like I was late to the game until I realized that it hadn't met mainstream people yet. So now if I walk down the street, probably 9 out of 10 people would know what a podcast is. So now I had a girlfriend say to me the other day, she's like, you're talking about podcasts all this time. I had no clue what you're talking about, but now I listen to podcasts every day when I commute to and from work for half an hour every day. I was like, aha.
This is great. Let's start with some of the questions because we have several questions.
Sure.
And this is very interesting. It's from Jonah. And Jonah seems to have a little bit of a problem in confidence. He would like to become a host, but how do you build up your confidence as a host? Very big question.
Great question, Jonah. And you know what? The only way to do it is to start doing it. And that's the only way that you can get more confident at it is just start practicing. Even if you just practice recording with friends or with colleagues or people that, you're just curious about and just having a casual conversation, the more and more times that you do it, you will get better and better at it, and you'll feel more and more confident. If you listen back to the first episodes that I did, they don't sound as good as the newer ones do. And that's the same for everybody.
There is a very young person, and she asked me not to say her name, so let's call it Jenny. Jenny would like to get into podcasting, but she thinks she doesn't have a very good voice. How important is to have a good voice, or can you train yourself somehow?
Yeah, I think what you need to remember is that everyone has a different kind of voice. And so you may think that your voice isn't good, but it may be very good in other people's ears. And, yes, there's lots of exercises you can do to train your voice. And I had a TEDx trainer. She trains TEDx speakers. She was on my podcast. Her name is Janine Graham. And she showed us some exercises you can do with your voice before you start recording, which is what I should have done because I started coughing in the middle of talking. And the last time I did that was Freedom Summit last year. So yes, I should have done her. I should have done her exercises before the podcast, before the interview.
There's another interesting question, a little bit about what I was saying before. And John again says the podcast is not yet that popular in the Philippines. Other might argue with him. How can we market it here? How can we make it more popular?
You guys, it's time. It's timing. Honestly, if I could go back and start my podcast when it wasn't popular in Canada, US, or, that is when you want to get into the market. And that's when you want to start podcasting. It may take a couple of years for people to catch up to it, but the people that are making the money podcasting, or that are having the most success podcasting, are the ones who started first, and they were the first ones there, and they were the ones that were there for a while before anyone else was. So get in there, claim your space. If you are a copywriter, get in there, start talking about copywriting. It doesn't have, and podcasting, remember, it's not location based. So you can be listening to, people can be listening to you from all over the world. My podcast is super popular in Colombia for some reason. I have no idea why. I also have a lot of listeners in the Ukraine. So who knows why? But people will listen to you from all over the world. So it's not location based. So just because it's not popular with listeners yet in the Philippines, it is popular with listeners all over the world.
As we like to say it here, it's location free. One of our big 3 forms of freedom we're talking about these days. We have another question. This is coming from Jendi, and she would like to know more about the platform that was able to help you to build the traffic that you want. Very good question too.
That was a great question. So what's cool about podcasting is when you create a show, you get a little piece of feed, and this feed, you submit it to all of the platforms. So Google, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, all the big platforms, you automatically will send your show there, which is great. And then you want to have your podcasts on coming into your website. So you can send people to your website for the traffic, and then they can go and find you on other platforms and subscribe to your show there.
Then we have a tricky question from John. John thinks he has great ideas for podcasting, but he's a little bit short of cash. So he's wondering, in the very beginning, do you have to invest a lot of money in microphones, hardware, software? How do you start?
Yeah, you know what? If it's a budget thing, what I would start with is a free Zoom account and a computer, and that's really all you need at the beginning. Or even just small headset, small earbuds are fine too. And that, those are ones that you can use with your cell phone as well. There's no special kind of earbuds like that. And the microphone, and microphones can cost a little bit of money. So if you don't have microphone, if it's not in the budget, that's totally fine. Just get started with what you have. Your computer audio speakers are just fine.
I guess we have a lot of prospective clients for you, because there are many beginners here that are asking basic questions on how to start. And Jean would like to know, I don't have followers. How do I start podcasting? Should I start podcasting? What is your advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of different schools and thought on this. Some people think that you should build your followers first, then start a podcast. Other people think that you should start a podcast to build followers. And my school of thought on this is that it doesn't matter either way. Just get started, get your message in the world. And as you're putting your message out in podcasting, you can also be sharing it on other platforms and other places as well. But what you do want to make sure you're doing is building a community. And one of the best things to do to build that community is start a movement, or start something that people can get on board with. Start it for a cause, or for, whether you are, starting your podcast because you really want moms to work from home. That's a great cause. That's a great movement. People will get on board with that. So whatever you're going to do for your podcast, make sure you put some intention behind it and create a movement around it. And so you'll build a community with it. And when you have a community, you have dedicated, loyal listeners that are always going to love your show. And also, when you're starting a show, make sure you help people, let people in on, deciding on, do you like this cover or that cover? What music do you like, this one or this one? Help them to help you decide and create your show. Then they're going to be loyal listeners forever.
As you know, Freedom Summit Global is dealing with 3 different forms of freedom. It's location, time, and financial independence. So Celine has a very down-to-earth question. How do I make money with podcasting?
That is a great question. So there's lots of different ways you can do a monetization on a podcast. One would be to your own programs and services, like most of my clients do. So they've created a course or a webinar or a coaching program. And so their listeners will come and join them through there. Another way of doing that is through a paid advertising. And that's not something that I am super familiar with or that a lot of my clients do. Another one that you can do is called affiliate marketing, which I'm sure you guys have heard of over the last few days. Affiliate marketing is another great way in podcasting as well to monetize your show. And there's a bunch of other ways of monetizing your show. Some people pay for spots on your show. There's lots of different monetization, but what I find to work the best is actually giving your content, having free content on there, not monetizing your content on the podcast, just building lots of value, using the podcast for your value, and then inviting people into a community like a Facebook group or something where then you can nurture them more, add more value, and then bring them into a course or an offer or something, a webinar or something paid there.
Very interesting. We have a question from Love, and Love would like to be more specific. She would like to know which kind of platform are you using in podcasting? I understand there's a huge variety, but maybe you can give us some hints about it.
Sure. So I use a platform called Libsyn, Libsyn, to host my show. A lot of my clients also use something called Blueberry, so Blubbrry. So those are two big podcast platforms that you can use. So like a website, a podcast needs a host site. So those are two that we would use. And from there, our podcast is then distributed across all the platforms like Spotify and Apple iTunes and Google Play and all those kind of big platforms.
Funny you mentioned Blueberry. I'm old enough to remember when I was holding in my hands a BlackBerry.
Yeah, that's right.
Centuries ago, and the vast majority of the people that are listening to us probably never had this opportunity. But we were technological back then. A BlackBerry was a really cool thing.
I don't know what's with all this. What's all the fruit? Like, where's the strawberry or the banana next? I don't know.
They are in the next wave. They're in the next wave. Just wait and see. We have one more question from Jack. And Jack would like to know, how long is the process of launching a podcast? And maybe if you can give a more detailed idea about some of the steps.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's about 6 things that you need to launch a podcast. One, you need a cover artwork and a title. Then you need to have some music and an intro and an outro for your show. And then you need to have about 4 episodes recorded. And then you need to have a hosting site. So those are the basic things that you need to get a podcast together. We recommend that you launch with 4 shows created. And in order to do that, give yourself about 30 days to get all that together.
And then there is a final question, because unfortunately, the time has come almost for the next speaker. And this comes from Fabio from Italy. And the question from Fabio is, what is your secret for being so successful in the podcasting business, which is highly, highly competitive around the world?
That's right. So the way I'm successful in the podcasting space that I do, I'm not only a host, but I'm also a podcast manager. And so for myself and my business, that's where I create my freedom from and most of my income from, is not being a host, but being a podcast manager. So helping other people manage their show. There's so many people out there in the world that really need to stay in their zone of genius of content creation, and they just cannot do all the technical stuff. They're just not technical people, and they have the budgets to pay you to do it. So for anyone out there who's a virtual assistant or, technical and by nature, or loves like editing and video software stuff, like this is a perfect like gig for you. I can tell you. I have a team of podcast managers. We also help podcast managers get started, and it's a really fascinating space. But I think what's made us unique is we've picked a certain kind of podcast to work with. We only work with people who are entrepreneurs and experts who have a positive message to make in the world. And those are the only people we work with. So we're not doing comedy shows or work or sports shows or anything like that. So we've really created our niche, and it's very specific who we work with. And that's how we can shine, because we're not very good at the audio drama and the crime shows and the ones with the voice actors and things like that. That's totally different kind of thing for us. We love the entrepreneurs that can make a big difference in the world.
That's fantastic. We heard about your achievement of being in the top 50 moms in podcasting. We don't care about the other 49. We like you. So this is Michelle Abraham, founder and owner and podcast coach of Amplify. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michelle. One last thing. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely check out the free gifts, mypodcastcoach.com/gifts. And also you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Facebook at Michelle Abraham. Reach out to me there. I'm happy to connect. And I love chatting about podcasting. And Fabio, I have 2 prizes to give away on this call. So one, if you can pick out someone that was really awesome at participating, I have a $500 value gift of being a guest on my show. I would like to invite someone to do that. And
All
2,
right.
also someone to have a 30-minute strategy session with me as well. That would be amazing.
We will have a section for giveaways very soon, so we'll
Perfect.
make sure. And thank you so much for your generosity. It's
You're
always
welcome.
a pleasure to be there. Now, go get your glass of water and
Thank you.
relax. You did a great job, great energy. It's always fantastic to have you on board. Goodbye, Michelle.
Bye, Fabio. Thank you.